Kia ora, ko Stephanie tuku ingoa, haere mai. Welcome to AdaptiveGo. Hi, my name is Stephanie. Today I have the lovely Sarah from Skills New Zealand. She's a wellbeing workplace specialist, and she's also studied a lot on sleep. And so today we're going to talk sleep. I'm not a health professional, so I'm a patient, and I just have my own experiences, and I talk about my journey from my experiences. So are you a doctor?
No, I'm not a doctor. Actually, by trade I'm a personal trainer and yoga teacher, but I have done postgrad studies, so I'm a workplace wellbeing specialist. I have a psychology degree, but my postgrad studies are in health science, and through that I studied sleep.
So Sarah, tell us, how come you're so into sleep?
Yeah, look, I work with a lot of people to kind of boost people's well-being, and when I studied sleep as part of my postgrad studies, what I realised is that sleep is fundamental to every aspect of our well-being. We know it has an impact on our physical health, it absolutely has an impact on our mental well-being, and also other aspects like our ability to cope well with our job and to get on with other people.
It's amazing because I know, having my chronic health condition, I've never really purposefully set out to improve my sleep. But in my journey through managing my pain and trying to get my disease under better control, I've found that sleep, you're right, it's just so fundamental. And if you can really, really land it and get it right and get a good night's sleep, you know, you're more resilient.
You know what, we don't really know why we sleep, but we can learn a lot of lessons from what happens when we don't get enough. And one of the things that we know is that, in particular, you talked about our resilience, that actually one of the biggest impacts on our health from sleep loss is actually to our mental health, right? So we know when it comes to things like our pain tolerance, for some reason, again, we don't know all of the reasons why, but when we don't get enough sleep, we tend to have a lower pain tolerance, and that can have a real impact on when we're dealing with a chronic illness. We know it has a
so it's the ability to kind of cope, the emotional regulation and coping with pain.
Yes, yeah.
So
we know from, for example, it has a huge impact on our immunity. To things like, rheumatoid arthritis, which is really intimately tied with the immune response, that when we don't get enough, then that's going to have adverse impacts on our symptoms and things like that too.
So the immune response, like in inflammatory arthritis conditions, is that your immune response is hyperactive. So when you have more sleep, does it sort of calm it down a little bit, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the research suggests is that actually when we don't get enough, that makes our inflammatory response worse.
Right.
But actually when we get more, our immunity seems to get a boost.
So that's really interesting, Sarah. So what else does sleep help with?
Yeah, well, I think there's really two core points that we haven't made that are really important to particular arthritis. And one of them is, sleep is fundamental to the restoration and recovery of every cell in our body. And in particular, thinking about our muscle repair. So we know that every athlete understands how important a really good night's sleep is to recovery following a really good training session, right? And so that same thing applies to dealing with a chronic illness. Is actually you need that recovery time for your body to heal itself.
It's quite interesting because with my disease, sometimes the recovery from exercise, it can take me 3 days, but sometimes as long as 7 days to sort of recover from exercise. And you have to be careful when you're bouncing back into exercise and your body's still exhausted from the previous exercise. You have to cut it right back. But sleep can help with that repair work, so that might be able to start back a little earlier from after having overcooked it, or if my body's having like this flare episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you really have to be able to listen to your own body. You know, I do come from a personal training background, and I had clients that had arthritis, and I found that it was a really individual thing in terms of what people could cope with. It depended on their fitness level, but it also it depended on a lot of other things that they had on in their life. So you have to be able to listen to your body, but understanding that sleep is a fundamental component of that recovery process.
Sometimes I just feel so exhausted, I probably overeat. So, you know, and I did an earlier video with Ramon when he was a puppy and carrying him in my bag, and I think he only weighed 3 kilos or something, and I was like, oh, he's so heavy. and I was just really, you know, really mindful that actually 2 or 3 kilos, if I could just drop them, it would be really helpful. So what role does sleep have to play in all of that?
Yeah, look, we know that sleep plays a really fundamental role again in actually weight management. So what happens when we don't get enough sleep is that because sleep is so important to our physiology, that when we don't get enough, our body floods with stress hormones, so cortisol and adrenaline and the like, to kind of give us a little bit of extra juice. But what that does is it also floods our body with glucose, right? And that can start to have an impact on our ability to kind of metabolize sugar and metabolize fats. It raises our heart rate, it raises our blood pressure, and all of those things together have an impact on our weight management. So even just a little bit of sleep loss over an extended period of time can have an impact on our weight, and we tend to see people's weight go up.
I just recently read Bernice Tuffery's book Sleep Easy, which I think you loaned me, but anyway.
Yeah.
So her life experience is that she had chronic insomnia and she needed to fix it. But what she found really interesting is there's this big sleep epidemic where people don't know that they're not getting enough sleep, and people don't know how to fix it, and also that the health professionals are sort of in New Zealand and Australia in particular are still struggling to catch up with it. So we have very few sleep specialists. So it's kind of quite interesting that when it's so fundamental, makes such a big difference to our health, yet we're only really just starting to catch up on the knowledge and understand that actually just getting this one bit right makes a big difference. So how do we get it right? Like, how much sleep should we be having?
And so what is enough? Well, we know it's an individual thing, but the research suggests between 7 and 9 hours sleep for an adult they need each night. We know that some people can cope on less, but it's only about between 1 and 3% of the population. So it's not no one. You know, if there is really anything to try and help you sleep more, it's the most important thing is about getting yourself into good sleep habits, and we call it sleep hygiene. So these are the things that you do to really set yourself up for a really good night's sleep. And yes, it starts a couple of hours really before you go to bed. But actually, I think I said to you when we were just chatting once that actually getting a good night's sleep starts the moment you wake up, because everything that you do during the day, what you eat, things like caffeine and alcohol and the food you put in your body, all has an impact on your sleep.
I used to have quite bumpy sleep, but then I got Ramon, and someone said to me, have you noticed since you've had a dog that your well-being's better? And I was like, yeah, that's all because he's just such a beautiful dog. But actually, when I was learning more about sleep and studying about sleep, what I realised is it's true. When they say that you need to get up at a consistent time in the morning, it really does make you sleep better your whole night. Weekends, mornings, doesn't matter, I'm up, and it's really made a difference to my sleep. And so I just thought, they don't know what they're talking about. I've got it right. And you can sleep in, but actually the reality is that you should be, if possible, sleeping consistently morning and night.
Absolutely, and I have to say I have a puppy too, and they have probably been one of the best additions to my personal sleep hygiene as well. And why is that, right? And like you said, you have to get up at the same time every day to walk them and that kind of thing. So in terms of our ability to sleep, there are two kind of drivers. One is our sleep pressure, our sleep, how much, and so that's like we're sleepy when we've been awake for an extended period of time, then it's time to sleep. But the other system that really drives our sleep is our body clock, our circadian rhythm, and that is set by how we spend our day and how we spend our time. And so what we're trying to do with getting a good sleep is actually regulate the body clocks, and that really sets the momentum for all sorts of physiological systems in our body, right? To help us sleep. So in terms of what the things you can do to kind of help that, well, there's really three things you need to manage when you want to get more sleep. First is light. So how much light we get has an impact on our ability to sleep. And so things like digital devices and how much time we spend inside and outside have an impact on our ability to sleep. The second one is temperature. We all know how difficult it is to sleep when it's too hot. You know, in summer in Wellington when it hits 21 degrees, we can't cope with that heat. Well, we know that it is a little bit sad, but we know that we sleep best when in a room that's about 18.5 degrees. Again, there's an individual variation, but we need to get that temperature right. And the third one is our activity level. And activity levels really, when I'm talking about activity, I'm actually talking about three things. So I'm talking about our physical activity. So we know that, exercise is the number one non-pharmaceutical treatment for insomnia. So we actually need to move enough during the day. Yeah,
really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
We need to move enough during the day to basically wear us out to sleep.
That's so true. You've got to get your pacing right, but actually you also need to move.
Yeah.
So, you just have to work out how to do it and what works for you.
So the other two types of activity are really your eating activity and your thinking activity. So what I mean by that is, what we put into our body has an impact on our ability to sleep. So we're talking about, the main culprits here we're talking about are actually caffeine and alcohol. And the last activity category we're talking about, this is really your thinking activity, and that's one of the things that people most often talk to me about. And they say, well, what do I do? Because I go to bed and then everything all of these thoughts come to my mind. And we know that that does happen. So being able to kind of calm down the mind is a really important thing. So that could be things like having a nice warm shower or having a warm bath. It could be reading a book. It could be dimming the lights. That all helps. But also shifting what we're thinking about. So we know, I've talked to you about how effective CBT can be for helping people. So that's cognitive behavioural therapy, can be useful for helping people to get to sleep. But there are some things that you can do yourself. So we know that sometimes people's brains really rev up with all those things they need to do, the to-do list. And one way to kind of override that is to keep a gratitude journal.
Right.
Actually. So writing things like things that you're grateful for in your life.
So there's a New Zealander that's started a website on gratitude journals. I can't remember her name, but look, I'll look it up and I'll put it in the links below. But I do this occasionally and want to do more of it. But sometimes I just draw a picture about the thing that I was most grateful for, or I write something really corny. But it really sort of shifts your thinking and helps. And that sort of whole shifting your thinking and calming your system, that stuff's so important, not just for sleep, but also when you're trying to manage a chronic illness. It's really about calming everything down. And if you calm everything down through the whole day, it helps you stay on top of your pain and your mental health, but also has this fabulous benefit of helping you get to sleep more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess probably the best way to kind of slow down that busy brain is to also slow down your breathing. We know that when you slow down your breathing, you slow down your thinking, right?
Yeah.
And you create that kind of space to be able to be calm. Yeah. So some of the great meditation and mindfulness apps can be really helpful for going to bed. So, you know, there's the Calm app and there's all sorts of other ones. You can put
We'll
links
put some
down,
links
right?
in, yeah.
Of really good ones. But, you know, just at the most simple level, just slowing down your breathing. So, you know, going through a cycle of just, you know, closing your eyes, maybe taking your eyesight down if you don't want to close your eyes, and just paying attention to your breath. All of these things we're talking about on their own are just such tiny things, right? And you think that actually, how could they be effective? But all of these things all contribute to our well-being, right? So any one thing may not work for you, but actually little things and little changes can make a huge difference when you do them all together. So that's such a powerful message, Sarah, and so helpful, because I think it's often up to us to be able to make the changes, and it's so hard to make changes when it's tough. You know, you're sore, you're tired, you're in fatigue, and it's like, oh, now I've got to do this other change. But in actual fact, it's just little bits, and little bits over time add up to quite big bits. And it's persisting with the little bits so that you can see the big benefit. And it is something that we can do. We can get in control of our pain and our sleep. But it is something that you need to work with if you've got a chronic health condition in particular, that you need to work with your GP on. And one of the biggest things is getting your pain management sorted, so that when you go to bed and you've got nothing else to think about, the pain monster doesn't kind of rear its head and come at you. And the other really big thing is really exploring things like cognitive behavioural therapy for things like the worry monster, you know, that comes in at night, but also learning about sleep, just reading a book on it. I'll put some links below, and just exploring stuff about sleep is really, really useful for working out understanding what it is that you can do and what some of the myths are about sleep. For instance, you know, oh, I can't do anything about it, it'll just come or it won't. And that's kind of true, it just will come or it won't, but you can kind of set stuff up for it to happen better. So thanks a lot, Sarah, for coming today. It's been great. I've learned heaps, and I'm sure everyone out there will find it useful. So subscribe, make sure you don't miss out, and I'll see you next time. Ka kite.